I am not allowed to say what's going to happen today because everyone's just going to have to watch for themselves. But it's going to happen. Something's going to happen.
There's a moment on January 6th when police radios stopped sounding like radios. They sounded like panic. You hear breathing. You hear screaming. You hear someone yelling,
"Hey, stop! What are you doing? We're surrounded! There's a victim! We lost the line! We lost the line!"
Inside the United States Capitol, a building meant to outlast centuries, law enforcement officers are being beaten, crushed, and hunted through hallways. This is not disorder. This is violence with intent. January 6, 2021 was supposed to be routine. Congress gathered to clarify an election already decided. Courts had ruled, states had certified. The process was constitutional and final. But outside the Capitol, a lie had been allowed to grow unchecked. That lie, that the election was stolen, did something dangerous. It turned defeat into rage. Rage into movement. Movement into violence. And by the afternoon, that violence reached the doors of America's democracy. By late morning, the crowd swells. Not everyone came to listen. Some came wearing helmets. Some carried radios. Some had body armor beneath their jackets. And some had guns. Flagpoles were reinforced with metal. Backpacks carried with chemical spray. Online messages beforehand promised war, 1776, and blood. This wasn't an accidental escalation. This was expectation. And then the crowd began to move. At the outer barricades, Capitol Police stands shoulder to shoulder. They are outnumbered. The crowd surges. Metal fencing bends like paper. Officers are shoved to the ground, stomped, pulled away from their partners. One officer is punched as others scream for help. Another is crushed against concrete. This is the moment the United States Capitol becomes undefended. The line breaks. The lower West Terrace becomes something else entirely. A tunnel, a choke point, a trap. Bear spray fills the air so thick officers choke behind their masks. Shields are ripped away and turned into weapons. Metal poles slam into helmets again and again. One officer is pinned in a doorway, crushed, screaming. Another is dragged into the crowd and beaten unconscious. Federal prosecutors would later describe this scene in cold language. Violence was used to obstruct and impede the certification of the election. But there was nothing cold about it. It was hand to hand, face to face. At 2 p.m., windows shattered, doors buckled. The Capitol is breached. The sounds echo. Glass breaking in a building, never meant to hear it. Inside, history is vandalized. Marble floors are slicked with water, debris, and blood. Statues watch as rioters run through corridors shouting names. Offices are torn apart. Documents scattered like confetti from a democracy under assault. This is not symbolism. This is desecration. In the Senate chambers, rioters sit where senators fled minutes earlier. They pose for photos, they laugh, they chant. In the House chamber, officers pile furniture against the door. Guns are drawn. On the other side of the glass, fists slam again and again. Chants echo throughout the hall.
Bring out back! Bring out back!
Outside, a gallows stands. Inside, people are hiding. More than 140 officers are injured that day. They suffer concussions, broken bones, chemical burns, traumatic brain injuries. One officer loses part of a finger. Officer Brian Sicknick collapses after confronting the mob. He dies the next day after suffering multiple strokes. Medical officials note the physical stress and the chemical exposure of the attack. In the months that follow, several officers involved take their own lives. The damage does not leave with the crowd. For hours, help does not come. Radios fail. Command structure collapses. Reinforcements are delayed. Officers later testify they believed they would die inside the Capitol. They were holding the line with their bodies, alone. The building falls not because of the incompetence at the front line, but because the system behind them failed. As nightfall, federal forces arrive. Rioters are forced out. Tear gas fills the rotunda. Boots crunch on broken glass. Blood stains the steps outside. The Capitol is retaken, not triumphant, but wounded. Congress returns hours later. The vote resumes under armed guard. Democracy continues, shaken, not whole. Years later, the language becomes unmistakable. In a court filing, Special Counsel Jack Smith's office lays it bare. The violence was not accidental. It was foreseeable, and it was used. Used as pressure, used as leverage, used to stop lawful transfer of power. The mob was not separate from the plan. It was part of it. January 6th was not chaos. It was an attempt to replace ballots with fists, law with fear, democracy with force. It failed because officers refused to step aside, even as they were beaten, crushed, abandoned, and killed. The Capitol still stands, but it remembers, and so should we.